been a few amazing women who have shown up in your life. We talked about Mama and some of the trauma, but they're in the darkness is always light. One of those, two of those women, and I want you to tell me about them. We know her as Mrs. Jackson, but Jacqueline Jackson, and Michelle Obama, also known as FLOTUS. Tell me how those two women impacted your life.
Well, Michelle is a quick answer. We all hung out in the same social circle. Santita Jackson and Michelle were really good friends in our 20s. And I had just got fired at Carol Mosley Brown from working at Carol Mosley Brown's. It's in the book. We'll get that one next.
Yes.
And no one would hire me because they were like, well, why would you leave a good Senate race? I was one to say, because it's crazy. But Michelle was over to the house one day and said, hey, what you doing? I was like, looking for a job. And she was like, hey, Barack just started this new project. I think he may need you. And Barack hired me. And then
Barack as in president of the United States. Okay.
The president of the United States hired me the next week.
Nice.
And I was desperately looking, because it was Project Vote, so I was doing voter registration with him, and this was going to be a temporary project. And then it was Barack who got me the next job as the National Field Director for Physicians for a National Health Program, because he knew Quentin Young, Dr. Quentin Young. And so those connections from my, I hung out in those circles. And some people know in Chicago, some people don't, and it's documented in the book. I actually lived in the Jacksons' home. They bought a home across from their home that they've had for 30 years, and Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. and Jonathan Jackson, who will probably be the next congressman for the 1st Congressional District. Hey, we were housemates.
Yes.
We didn't live together. We were housemates.
You all were rowdy siblings.
We were rowdy. Oh, God, it's so many funny arguments in there about Jesse Jr. But, Mrs. Jackson took me under her wing, and she knew nothing about me.
She showed you grace.
She showed me grace and gratitude, and I was so grateful. And I talk about our special relationship. People always ask me where I get my style from. I learned about designers from her. I learned about antiques from her. And she was the first person to show me how to work with my hands. We would make dust ruffles and curtains together, and she taught me how to crochet, and I'm a knitter now. And at one period in the '88 campaign, when I came back and I was dealing with the secret, and I was just so wounded, and I talk about how being with Mrs. Jackson, just sitting with her, brought me back to life.
I mean, exactly the moment you're talking about.
Yeah, and she didn't even know, because I was living in secret. I didn't tell for 7 years. I kept my infection a secret. And I even remember the day I had transitioned to AIDS, and I knew I had to tell, and so I told Reverend first, and we were standing in the kitchen, and I said, Reverend, I got something serious to tell you. He said, you're pregnant? I was like, no, I wish. And I told him, I said, I have AIDS. And he said, you mean HIV? And I was like, no, I have AIDS. And, because in his mind, AIDS was dying. And he just said, stop. He said, Rae, I loved you before AIDS. I loved you with AIDS. We prayed, and he said, does Jackie know? And we went into the dining room together and told Mrs. J. And I tell people all the time, I say, and I used to get a banana pudding every time I asked, but then when she realized I wasn't dying. But there was some discussion within the family actually about moving me into the house to take care of me, because, AIDS was a death sentence back then, and this was before I started speaking. We had one death in the Push family, Keith Barrow, who was Reverend Willie Taplin Barrow's son. He was an R&B singer. He was one of the first in that early group of young black gay men to die from this disease. And so Mrs. Jackson, but not just Mrs. Jackson, but there were, I call them North Stars in the book, these people who God just put in my life, in my path, that gave me just enough reprieve from mama. And psychiatrists talk about people who live, young people, children who live in this kind of repeat trauma. They need what you call buffers. They need people who could come in and give them breaks from the trauma. And that's what God just put people in my path.
Wow.
I can't even explain it.
Death didn't happen. You have persevered. You are an activist. Tell me the rest. What is your life like today? I know you're an ordained minister.
I
Is
am
that
an
correct?
ordained,
Wow.
licensed. I
Okay.
have a Master of Divinity degree.
Okay.
But what was always clear, that God didn't call me to pastor, but that I have a public ministry. What I do, seminary was to fortify me so that I'm not talking out the side of my neck, because our people are suffering. They need more than the quick fix Christianity. And so we spend a whole lot of time talking about getting our souls prepared for the afterlife, but how are we going to help people, heal people with a living soul, a healthy soul in the now. So I'll always do that. AIDS isn't a sexy topic anymore. I'll still talk about my life with AIDS, I lived the span of this disease.
Yes.
But I also want to talk about trauma and the impact trauma has had on my life and on so many others, and how we can help these young people who've lived through trauma. Adults, survivors of trauma, have poor health outcomes as adults. And so I want to begin to connect some of that. Other than that, I live a simple life. My tea. I
And
have
your
a
baby.
My poodle.
Yes.
Everybody knows I'm a poodle mom. Right now, it's Chloe Chanel.
Yes.
I knit. I'm, again, an avid reader. You know, I never wanted a house because I was going to die. And now at 60, I want a house. So where I can wake up in the morning and listen to the birds to sing. I just got to get the money to buy it.
Come on. I got one more question
Okay,
for you.
one more
For
question.
now.
Okay.
Are you happy?
I am. Oh, God, I am so happy. I am happy. I'm at a good place. Writing the book, I worked through a lot of, I've been working through the pain before the book. I've been in therapy for 25 years. I was 29 when the therapist told me that I wasn't having sex, that I had been raped, that my aunt raped me, that my stepbrother raped me. And so it's been a journey getting to this place. But I like me, I like myself, I like how I do things. I'm comfortable with who I am now in a way that I've never been before. And I can give two goddamn shits whether anybody care or think about me and my life, because God's gonna open every door I'm supposed to go through.
I'm gonna tell you, that feels like that's the close. That's the conversation right there. Rae Lewis-Thornton, it was a pleasure. This book was powerful. I hope as many people who can be touched by it, can read it, can share in it. I continue to root for you. Your work with trauma, your work with young people, your care about young people is amazing. Thank you for joining us in the arena and in the Arena Extra.
Absolutely.
All right.